I ate alone in my car after graduation, until the principal tapped on my window. If you've ever felt isolated during what should have been your proudest moment, this story might resonate with you. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Now, let's dive into a story about unexpected connections and second chances. I never imagined I'd be eating a cold burger alone in my beat-up Honda Civic on graduation day. The muffled sounds of celebration drifted from the school gymnasium as I sat in the farthest corner of the parking lot, watching families snap photos with their graduates through my fogged-up windshield. My own graduation cap and gown were carelessly tossed onto the passenger seat, the tassel hanging limply over the edge. The diploma, the one I'd worked so hard to earn, lay unopened in my lap. Everyone else had someone, parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, all inside, beaming with pride, snapping countless photos, and planning celebration dinners. I had sent out invitations 3 weeks earlier, one to my dad's last known address in Arizona, another to my mom's rehab facility in Oregon, and a third to my older brother, who was too consumed with his own life to be bothered with mine. The responses were exactly what I'd expected: silence, excuses, and eventually my own quiet acceptance. Principal Harrison had called my name. Like everyone else's, I'd crossed the stage, accepted my diploma with a firm handshake, and even managed a smile for the photographer. I heard a few cheers, probably from teachers, who knew I'd overcome more than most to get here. But when I scanned the crowd, there was no one standing, no one calling my name, no one waiting to hug me afterward. So I did what seemed reasonable at the time. I changed out of my gown in the bathroom, slipped out a side door while families were still gathering, and drove to the first fast food place I saw. Now I was sitting here, eating lukewarm fries, and wondering if this moment, this milestone, would always feel this empty. The sharp knock on my window nearly made me choke on my burger. Principal Harrison stood there, still in his full academic regalia, looking at me through the glass with an expression I couldn't quite read. I reluctantly rolled down the window, bracing for some generic comment about how I should be inside celebrating with everyone else. "Mind if I join you?" he asked instead. Before I could respond, he was already walking around to the passenger side. I quickly grabbed my cap and gown, shoving them into the back seat along with empty energy drink cans and textbooks I no longer needed. "Sorry about the mess," I muttered, as he folded his tall frame into my small car, his ceremonial robes bunching awkwardly around him. "I've seen worse," he said simply, adjusting himself. "The teacher's lounge would shock you." An awkward silence settled over us, as I held my half-eaten burger, uncertain of what to do next. Principal Harrison wasn't known for forming personal connections with students. In my 4 years, I'd only been in his office twice. Once when I'd been caught skipping class to work on a scholarship application, and once when he'd told me I was valedictorian material if I applied myself a bit more consistently. "You know," he finally said, staring straight ahead through the windshield, rather than at me, "I noticed you weren't in the gym for the reception." I shrugged, taking another bite of my burger, to avoid answering right away. Wasn't really feeling the whole celebration thing. "I get that," he nodded, surprising me. "My own high school graduation? I spent the after-party hiding in the library. Last place anyone would find me." This didn't fit the image of the stern, always composed Principal Harrison I thought I knew, the man who gave perfectly measured speeches, and seemed to glide through the halls with unshakable confidence. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. He smiled faintly. My parents were having a very public argument about who I'd be living with afterward. Made the whole proud family thing feel like a bit of a farce. He paused, then added, they'd been divorced for 3 years by that point, but somehow my graduation day seemed like the perfect time to rehash old grievances. That sucks, I offered awkwardly, not sure what else to say. It did, he agreed. But you know what? That day wasn't really about them. I snorted. Yeah, well, today isn't really about anyone for me. No audience, no problem, right? Principal Harrison turned to look at me now. I saw your academic record, Ethan. I know what you've been juggling. Working night shifts at that warehouse, while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, isn't something just anyone could pull off. I shifted uncomfortably. I didn't enjoy being reminded of the balancing act my life had become since I started living on my own last year. The late night shifts, the exam dates, the constant fatigue, and falling asleep in the school library during free periods, because it was the only quiet place left to rest. It's not a big deal, I muttered. Lots of kids have it worse. That doesn't make what you've achieved any less remarkable. He countered. You know, when I saw your name on the graduation list, I made a point to watch for you specifically today. Why? I asked, genuinely puzzled. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I wasn't exactly the sort of standout student principals usually went out of their way to remember either. 4 years ago, your middle school counselor called me. He said quietly, she warned me you might not make it to graduation, said your home life was deteriorating, that you'd missed too many days in 8th grade, that you might drop out before sophomore year. He paused. She wasn't being pessimistic, just looking at the statistics. Kids in your situation often don't make it. I remembered that time all too well. Mom's addiction getting worse, Dad leaving, the eviction notices, sleeping on friends' couches, until my brother let me crash on his floor, until he too decided I was too much of a burden. Yeah, well, I said, trying to steady my voice. Spite is a pretty powerful motivator. Principal Harrison actually chuckled at that. Indeed it is. But it takes more than spite to accomplish what you did, Ethan. It takes something special. We sat in silence for a while, the distant sounds of celebration still lingering in the air. I'd stopped eating, the food suddenly tasteless. You know what I think? Principal Harrison eventually said. I think sometimes we focus so much on who isn't there, that we fail to recognize those who were with us all along. No offense, but I've basically been on my own, I said, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. Have you? He asked softly. Ms. Reeves stayed after hours every Tuesday to help you with calculus for an entire semester. Coach Phillips let you use the school showers when your apartment's water was cut off for those 2 weeks. The cafeteria staff always made sure you received extra portions. And I recall someone allowing you to sleep in the teacher's lounge. That week you were between apartments. I felt my face heat up. I hadn't realized he knew about that. Ms. Coleman, the English teacher, had given me the key, making me promise to leave before 6 a.m. so the early teachers wouldn't see me. You weren't alone, Ethan. Not really. Maybe not in the conventional sense. But you still had people looking out for you. I stared down at my hands, unsure how to process it all. I'd been so focused on what I didn't have. Parents in the audience, family photos, a celebratory dinner, that I hadn't considered what I did have. Teachers who bent rules, staff who looked the other way, a principal who paid far more attention than I'd realized. I have something for you, Principal Harrison said, reaching into his robes. He pulled out an envelope. This was going to be a surprise at the reception. But since you're here, I took the envelope cautiously. Inside was a card, signed by what looked like the entire faculty and staff. Congratulations, Ethan. We're so proud of you. You're going to do amazing things. The messages filled nearly every space on the card. But what caught my eye was the check, paper-clipped inside. A scholarship fund the teachers had pulled together to cover my first semester's books at community college. "We know about your partial scholarship," Principal Harrison explained, "and we wanted to help fill in a few gaps." "It's not much, but it's everything," I cut in, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. I cleared my throat. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," he replied. "Just make sure it wasn't wasted." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He checked his watch. "The reception will be wrapping up soon. I should get back." He opened the door but paused before stepping out. "You know, Ethan, people are shaped by those who show up, not just by those who don't." He gave me a meaningful look. "And sometimes, you've got to give others the chance to show up." With that, he stepped out, adjusted his robes, and before closing the door added, "A few of us are gathering at Donovan's Bistro in about an hour. Nothing formal, just a little post-graduation tradition. If you wanted to stop by, I'm sure everyone would be excited to see you. Your call, of course." Then he was gone, walking back toward the gymnasium, leaving me sitting there with cold food, and a card that meant more to me than any family photo ever could. I sat there for a long time, thinking about what Principal Harrison had said, about being shaped by those who show up, about unconventional support systems, about how I'd spent so much time dwelling on what I was missing, that I'd overlooked what I had. The parking lot gradually emptied as families left for their celebrations. I watched them go. The proud parents, the grandparents with cameras, the siblings toggling between boredom and pride. For the first time, I didn't feel that sharp pang of envy. Instead, I found myself wondering about their stories. How many of those smiling families had their own complications hidden beneath the surface? How many of those graduates had struggled in ways I couldn't see? I started my car as the last families pulled away. The school building looked different somehow. Not just the place I'd been desperate to leave for 4 years, but somewhere that had, in its own way, sheltered me when I needed it most. I carefully placed the card in my glove compartment, handling it like something fragile. Then I checked the time. The teachers' gathering at Donovan's would start soon. The idea of walking in made my stomach twist with nerves. But something else pushed against that feeling. Something that felt strangely like hope. I pulled out my phone and looked up the address for Donovan's Bistro. It wasn't far. I could at least drive by, see if I felt comfortable enough to go in. No pressure. Just an option. As I put the car in reverse, I noticed my graduation cap in the back seat. On impulse, I grabbed it, placing it on the passenger seat, where I could see it. A reminder that despite everything, I'd accomplished something meaningful today. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to celebrate it alone. When I pulled into Donovan's parking lot, 20 minutes later, I nearly turned around 3 times. But then I saw Ms. Reeves getting out of her car, laughing at something Coach Phillips had said. As they walked toward the entrance, Ms. Coleman was already holding the door open, her graduation heels swapped for comfortable flats. These people had seen me at my lowest, watched me fall asleep in class from exhaustion, wear the same clothes for days when laundry wasn't an option, and struggle to keep up when life became too overwhelming. Yet here they were, still showing up, still making room for me. I took a deep breath, grabbed my graduation cap, and stepped out of the car. Principal Harrison saw me first as I approached the entrance. He didn't make a big deal about it, just nodded slightly, what might have been approval shining in his eyes, before returning to his conversation. But Ms. Reeves broke into a wide grin when she spotted me, waving me over enthusiastically. "Ethan, you made it!" she exclaimed, as if my presence was the missing piece, needed to make the evening complete. As other teachers turned to greet me, I felt something shift inside. A knot loosening. A weight lifting. I hadn't had the conventional graduation day. No proud parents. No family photos. No relatives handing me cards with cash tucked inside. But as I stepped into that restaurant, surrounded by people who had quietly supported me for years, I realized I had something perhaps even more valuable. A chosen family who had seen my worth, even when I couldn't. Sometimes, life doesn't give us the celebrations we expect. Sometimes, we eat alone in our cars, while others gather inside. But sometimes, if we're lucky, someone knocks on our window and reminds us that we're not as alone as we feel. And sometimes, that makes all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about resilience, unexpected connections, and finding family in the most unlikely places. Remember, you never know whose window you might need to knock on, or who might be knocking on yours.